Hello everyone and welcome to another chill Sunday Staxel stream. I hope everybody's having a lovely Sunday. I'm just gonna wait for people to make their way in slowly. And we're gonna have a hopefully pretty chill day. Cray, welcome. How are you today? M, welcome, welcome. I'm gonna grab me some tea. Throw this up on Twitter. M was trying to beat Cray, but he's quicker. Yeah. Cray's fast on that. Cray was ready. Okay, we are up on Twitter. Been trying to fish my sleep schedule out of the dumpster, haven't been successful. Well, I hope that that improves. So, give it another few minutes for everybody to make their way in, and then we'll get started. So today, I hope we can, in this lovely game of Staxel, be able to get some more stuff done in terms of making friendships. I'm hoping that we can furnish the ship a little bit. And today, I actually want to talk about the importance of intersectionality a bit. And then I want to see if we can find some weird, odd things to do in the game. See if we can explore something that we haven't seen. Cray was here before I was live. Wow. You were more on time than I was. I was getting my pot of tea, that's why I was late. We all know I have to have my my pot of tea when I do Staxel. I'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll get into the game and go say hi to all the animal friends, and especially Base Cat, who grants us reality existence. We have to go dumpster diving for Cray's sleep schedule. That's funny. That's really funny, Em. Hmm? Who showed up, Em? Oh, okay. I mean, he did. He really did. As in, he got here on time. Let's make our way in. And we'll go say hi to Base Cat. Also, you slept through church cry? I just saw that. Hey, Base Cat. Base Cat's hungry. Oh no. Base Cat needs food. There you go, Base Cat. Well, how was your church nap, as it were? M does not have the Amazon? Oh, have you seen anything of the new Amazon series Invincible? No, I don't have access to Amazon series either. We're saying hi to all our animal friends. I missed one of the feeders, so... Oh, wow. You, like, legit slept through it. Like, you didn't even make it into the thing. For some reason, it registered to me that you were, like, in the middle of a Zoom call or something and then just fell asleep. Hey, Carl Barts. Oh, gotta feed the chickens as well. There we go. Chickens are nice and fed. Uh, everyone is now fed. And let's go check on the base ship. See where we left off last time. Now, if I recall correctly, we added the windows to the side, which I think was a nice touch. We've got the back of the ship with base cat on it. The only thing we don't have is a ram, which we can actually have come out from here. That'd be like the one detailing I'd want to add. But I would need to look at what a ram looks like for a ship. Like this one. So give me 1 second while I do that. Ram on a, let's say, 18th century ship. So it just kind of angles forward. Interesting. There's a lot of variation on these. Okay. I have some ideas for it then. Four, five, six. 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Welcome, Zero. How are you doing this lovely Sunday? Okay, that's a good start. You got a new green tea. It's purple? What kind of purple green tea did you get? pomegranate infusion? That sounds absolutely delicious. I've been pretty chill, just trying to take it easy this weekend. How about yourself, Zero? How's the rest of your weekend been so far? There we go. That's starting to get there. Pretty laid back. That's good to hear. Let's extend this out like 2 more. And we'll raise it up 1. Two, 3. 1, 2, 3. You've been a little on the tired side this weekend? Sorry to hear that. I wonder if there's any blocks that look kind of like steel, so this could like get like a steel outline looking thing to it. That needs to... I need to change that up a bit. Does that need to angle up a little bit more faster? I think so. Yeah, because I also think the bottom area just needs to be filled in. That would probably make it look a lot better too. Just cut the corners off. That's a little better. Then let's add one more row of blocks here. It turns out your mom's Mother's Day gift got delivered to your house and not hers. Oh no! That's so frustrating. M says I'd starting to get warm. I'm going to have to pull out my jars soon to make cold brew teas. Cold brew teas sound absolutely delicious. No, that mix-up is really bad, Sarah. Like, I'm so sorry. Can you at least send a photo in the meantime? At this point, it's better just to laugh about it. That's kind of real. Can't see in this lighting. I literally had a moment of who are you and what are you in my house? Why are you in my house? And then I forgot she lives here now. Zero says I told her I got a gift and she didn't even want me to get one for her, so I don't think it matters if it's a few days late. That's fair. I'm glad everybody involved is good about it. Doug says hi to everyone and that you're cool people, paraphrased. As usual, that is very appreciated and sweet. Looking forward to him getting better. Needs to be out a little bit more. So, do I have any blocks that I could use that kind of look like steel? Let's see. Or any sort of metal. Not really. That's clearly stone. Those are clearly wood. Not even commenting on that. I feel like the dark stone block is probably the closest thing to looking metallic. Oh, metal grid block? I guess that could work. Let's see. I was looking more for that, like, steel color, but if this is what we have, this is what we have. Let's see. We'll get one more. Kind of coat the outside, or like the front part in metal. I think that looks pretty decent. Got one more up on each side. And now just to complete this. That might be a little too vertical. I think that's a little too vertical. No. Hmm. Are there any holidays or celebrations in this game, like in Animal Crossing or Stardew? They do like a Halloween festival during the winter. The Fairy Queen shows up in the middle of spring. And there's some sort of festival with kind of a Japanese cultural theme, I believe, in the winter. And that's about it, as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure if it's like actually representing a actual holiday or not. Base Cat Day is every day, though. I need to extend that past that at the very least. Here we go. Unless I do this. Let me see if that would look better. What do we think of that as the ram for the ship? Is it a little too vertical, or does it look good? I am building a ramming portion onto the front of the ship. What do you think, Ray? Uh, it's a base ship, so maybe. I'm asking if it looks good to you, more than anything else. Listen to my heart. And base cat. True. I almost wonder if it would be excessive to do this or not. Cray wants you to learn telepathy, be able to read his opinions without having to ask. I don't think I can do that. I think that ram's too high now. Generally speaking, you just want the ram to be like, if it were to be in the water, you want it to be sitting on top of the water and it would run into something else before the front of your ship. So generally speaking, this is a good length for it. And then it's got like the steel or the metal infused on the front so that it's like adhered to the hull, the wooden part, which is holding it in place. So that makes sense to me. And this would literally be right above where, if it was an actual ship, the water would be. Because the water would probably come up to about here. That's where it would start floating. Maybe a little bit up front, so that this would actually be just sticking out of the water like this. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. We have a ship. So some of the details that I went over last stream when I was reviewing them that I wanted to make happen is I would very much like to fill in the captain quarters. I wanted to set up this area as like a holding area. And maybe just like do something so that the stairs are not showing up right here. Cargo in this area. I need to make stairs into the bottom area. And start filling this up with some furniture. Put some crates and stuff here. And then I wanted to add wings potentially to the outside. So I'm gonna need some of those cloud blocks. Let me take a look at what wings would look like. so I can get an idea of what I'm doing. I look up wings and it comes up with all sorts of like buffalo wings. I want it to look like a bird's wings. I don't know how I would get that texture right. You love yourself some buffalo wings? I feel like I would need some sort of gray block for that. To kind of create like the shadows. That could potentially work. The kind that we monetize? What are you talking about, Greg? What wings do we monetize? The capitalist running the search engine. Ah, gotcha. Let's see. Flying ship wings. Alright, that's not a bad image for me to base it off of. I have no idea how I'm gonna make that work. Well, you know what? We'll play around with it and see what happens. Do you think the wings should be angled horizontally or should they be angled vertically? That's my only question. Or maybe like... Yeah, actually that's a really great idea, Zero. A Pegasus would be a great way to examine how that would look. Yeah, I do think Cray's right. There's somewhere in between a horizontal and a vertical would probably be good. Maybe something like that. Like that would be the limb, basically. Hmm. Now, I'd want like a row of gray. To represent like a division in the wingspan. And from here, we can start moving outward. Yeah, I think the gray is actually really nice, especially if I cover it in the white. Because then it kind of creates that pattern where it looks like the lines in the wings. Like kind of that feathered effect. Let's see. Trying to think of how to go from here. I've never made a pair of wings before in a video game. You can put that on your resume now. Yes, my work resume where I build wings in video games. It'll be wonderful. I will have a new set of skills. maybe. We'll do another layer of gray here. I just fell asleep in the sky. That can go in my resume too. I'd be impressed with anybody who fell asleep in the sky. Let's... Maybe not a pilot. That would be a good way to not get a job. Is this looking anything like the beginning of a wing? Most of a pilot's job is automated already, so... I mean, they actually do fall asleep sometimes. But that's why you have a co-pilot. Like, if something were to happen to you and you were to get incapacitated or fall asleep, like, you want at least 2 people in charge of something like a plane like that. Welcome, Emma. I hope you are having a good day. You said, "Hi everyone, here to be distracted from my unproductive fixation on the Labour Party over the last couple of days." From what you showed me, or showed us all on the Discord, that's looking like something worth distracting yourself from for a little while. Is that looking like a wing at all? Actually, I feel like that looks like the start of a wing, no? Thank you, Emma. We added in a ram in the front of the ship. We've got the sails now, we've got the windows on the side. Now we're just trying to add some wings, and I think this is looking pretty decent. We also have base cat. I kind of wonder if I could move base cat's home up to the top of the ship. Let's see. What if we do that? And then start expanding that out like that. Zero says, I fed my dog a strawberry and 2 of them liked it. The other one thought it was a toad. Nice, Cray. You got a voice recorder? What are you going to use it for? Also, is it bad that I'm automatically assuming the dog turning that strawberry into a toy means that you now have red streaks all over your floor? Fair enough. Vinyl floors would make that a lot easier to clean than if you didn't have that. Let me see my... Go another layer. And then extend out this one. And then I want another layer here. Actually, not yet. Welcome, Vin. How's your Sunday going? We share fruits and veggies with Maggie because she'll eat anything. The other two are really picky. Maggie is an adorable pup. I'm gonna do one there and one here. Kinda tired. Your grandparents' old dog was named Maggie. It's a really good dog name, honestly. Better name for a dog than for a human. It may, in fact, be. Let's see. Let's see how this is coming up. I need some more there. I need one there. How are we feeling about those wings? What about the pattern, though? Because I feel like it does a good representation of, like, the feathering effect in between. Like, they definitely have work to do, they definitely have work I need to put on them, but I really like that, like, feathery look. I don't know if that makes sense. And you spoil your niece. I'm assuming your doggy niece. Do a layer here. A doggy niece, cool. Let's see. This in there. I'm gonna add a layer here. Welcome, merchants. Glad to have you here on this lovely Sunday. How are you doing? Exhausted but good. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're good, and hopefully, since you're exhausted, you can just relax and chill with us as we build the wings on the base ship. What do you think at the beginning of these wings merchants? I think I need to do something like... I am very glad to hear that, merchants. Let's throw a layer in here. Yeah, my goal was to try to get that like feathered effect that wings tend to have. And I didn't know how else to texture that. So I'm really glad that that's coming out and that the pattern's showing off as well as it is. Oh, from the bottom, look at that. Hold up. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It kind of does. I could see that. This is like the AT community version of DS9. Oh yeah, for sure. It's like a big white eagle wing. Let's throw that there. Love the giant cat on the back. Oh yeah. Couldn't do it without Base Cat. The wings really are starting to take shape. Greetings, Mifune. How are you doing today? I think I might just shrink that down one. Yeah, I like that a little. No, you know what? I think it was better before. Let's do an under layer and an upper layer. And then we'll add in a middle layer. And how's that? Wow. I'm gonna just add that there. And that there. There we go. Take care, Zero. Duke, welcome. You did not, in fact, miss the intersectionality conversation, Mifune. Also, Duke, I know you'll be excited. We added a ram to the front of the ship. That was funny. Y'all got to see my printer. I don't know why that happened. Well, thank you, Mifune. I'm really loving this texture on the wings. Whoops, my anarchy camera, indeed. Why is what yellow? ANCAP printer? My printer's black. Did it show up yellow? It may have been a lighting issue. Your doubts that computer generated are gone. That's strange that you saw yellow. Yes, I am indeed not computer generated, everyone. I actually do exist. It'd be cool if I was just a simulation. Anarchist VTuber. This has been my VTube persona the entire time. I got the really lifelike one. CGI content creators will be the new thing. Oh geez, don't give them ideas. Hecka sweet graphics team. Well, you know, it's that special budget we have. The only VTuber that isn't horrendously creepy uncanny valley. I actually find a lot of the VTuber animations to be surprisingly good. Let's do that. Should probably have a layer here. I wonder how long it would actually take me to build DS9 in Staxel. I'm kind of loving these wings, not even gonna front. 10 minutes to build DS9. The base cats protect us from the creepy moonlight. The ship is just as complex as DS9 at this point. That wing is absolutely gorgeous. I'm actually gonna add a layer here. There we go. That's nice. DS9 would be a very cool design for a house in Staxel. You know what I'm so tempted to do now? Go up as high as I possibly can and build like a wormhole entrance. I am loving this wing though. Make it the same kind of aesthetic as the ship. True. Charlotte, welcome. How are you doing this Sunday? Wood wormhole? Ooh, that could be interesting. I would actually have to probably load up a whole different map to make DS9. But I would love to do that. Can you imagine like a actual functional promenade? Man, that would probably take me months. DS9 is actually just a bit larger than Manhattan. Oh, wow. I definitely need a layer, like, right here. That looks much better. $50 grams of tea for $9? I would say so. That sounds very expensive to me. Yeah, the Enterprise does comfortably dock at one of the pylons, which is absolutely like, just so out there, right? DS9 models sound so cool. I would love to have one. Like, building something like that would be absolutely, like, fantastic. I'm really grateful that everyone here has kind of become a fan of it, or if they weren't already, before starting to watch. Let's add layer here. DS9 is a Christmas ornament. That'd be really cool as well. Charlotte, I suppose it was a bit of a mixed bag in some ways. I don't like how my family judges people that look and act different very much. I've been questioning their treatment of me in the past a bit more lately. That really does sound like a rough experience, Charlotte. It's difficult when family is not always understanding. God, I love how this wing is essentially like organically forming just from the layers. Duke's, let's see. Let me catch up with y'all. So, merchants, I would recommend if you're going to get like a bulk tea, I can send you some links in the Discord to some places where they have it really, really cheap. Just so you can get samples of flavors, even if it's not like the highest quality of teas, you can't beat the price of what I'll send you. I'll just do it after the stream. Jasmine green is a very fantastic tea, Duke. Lemon ginger teas are amazing as well. Glad to hear that Duke appreciates them. And Charlotte, yeah, a lot of times the hardest part is trying to figure out when to pick the battles. Have I ever seen the spaceships from Jirai in Tenchi Muyo? They're actually made out of wood. I've never watched Tenchi Muyo. Tea is one of those luxuries that I am grateful to have. So I think this might be a good time to start having our conversation about intersectionality. What do we all think? Seem like a good time? Cool. Merchants is ready. Sounds good. You know what? Let me actually just use the bathroom first, and then we'll do it. Let me just deal with a message I need to send first. You didn't think the revolution was coming this early? I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. What's going on? What's going on? You all rebelling against me? Good. You did politics? Who is the new president? One nation under a groove? Duke says it was rigged. Oh geez. We have a sectarian split going on. Democratically elect Cray in charge. Berkman would flip if he was in the chat. I think Berkman would be mostly confused at what a computer is. Can we be real about that? I think he'd be less worried about the chat and more worried about like what a base cat is and why we're talking on a computer and why I'm sitting here talking to myself in a room. And how he can see into the screen. Oh, Charlotte's voting for Duke. I didn't say he couldn't understand Duke. I'm just saying that he'd have a little bit of a different priority than the election that's going on in this chat. I think he would need just a brief explanation to catch him up. That's all I'm saying. Also, he might be a little confused at why he suddenly appeared back into life. Universal kitty housing, and food access. Now that's pretty based right there. Let's go one more down. Because it's a little bit awkward. So, with that said, intersectionality, people. Let's talk about intersectionality. So, the idea... So part of the reason, rather, I want to talk about this is because a lot of people in the online space have been talking about that CIA ad that came out. Has everybody seen that? More or less. I don't know if I can get away with showing it on the stream. But I just wanted to know, like, how many of us are kind of on the same page. You have, unfortunately. Charlotte's seen it. So basically this ad ends up using a lot of the language of intersectional understandings. The woke posturing ad, yes. It uses a lot of these intersectional understandings of pretty much the world as a whole to kind of create this narrative that the CIA is somehow going to be this bastion of wokeness, for lack of a better word. You are pretty much better off, M. And a lot of people have responded to this ad by trying to claim that intersectionality is indeed not a... You all are too funny in chat, just need to say that. But a lot of people who are not as familiar with the ideas of intersectionality have claimed that this is some sort of like identity politics pull that is making it so that the CIA is playing people against each other, and that it's um this kind of made up thing, for lack of a better term. I have definitely seen people make these type of claims that it's not helpful, it's not useful, and have basically reduced things down to this class reductionist mentality where the idea of intersectionality has basically come under fire from certain components of the left. So I thought it would be a good time to talk about what exactly intersectionality is and why it's actually important and how it's being essentially, well, for lack of a better word, appropriated by a lot of these organizations like the CIA and a lot of big businesses in order to further their own economic growth at the cost of what this actually is supposed to represent. So at its core, the idea of intersectionality is supposed to be an analysis of the differing forms of oppression that people experience and bringing those together to understand how our different relations, how different social relations influence our society through advantages and disadvantages, and how we experience them. So, if we talk, and it's a much better analysis than just being able to say, well, this person is, oppressed in this particular way. You're able to say that this person experiences the following sets of oppressions. And by analyzing it in that way, you're able to identify the unique experience of how different oppressions literally intersect with one another, kind of like on a Venn diagram. If you can imagine a Venn diagram, that's a very useful tool to understanding the concept of what we're talking about here. So essentially, what we're dealing with is something that analyzes these different forms of oppression and how they interact. And this is important for us as leftists because it allows us to have another tool to describe the ways in which oppressions exist in our world, the ways in which certain groups are marginalized or pushed to the side, and how they literally intersect with one another in different groups. So, for example, if you have a white woman in our society who's cis, she experiences a very specific form of oppression that is based around gender. That is what she will generally experience. If you had a man who happened to be black, he would experience a very specific form of racism. Welcome, King Cyrus. I hope you're doing well today. A black man, for example, would experience a very specific set of racism, but he would not experience the same type of oppression that a white woman would through the analysis of gender. But a black woman will experience a set of conditions that are both the gendered aspect as well as the racial aspect. And because of that intersectionality, the intersection of her blackness and womanhood, she will experience a unique set of oppressions that are unique to being a black woman. And so by analyzing that, we're able to see how these different ideas connect and relate to each other in that essence. And it is specifically designed to be a tool for us to analyze oppressions. And the fact that this is being appropriated and misused by these organizations like the CIA or a lot of big businesses has less to do with the idea that this is not something we should be looking at, but rather it is the desire for these types of organizations to manipulate and use these tools that we have at our disposal to make themselves either profitable or, in the case of business, or to make themselves look more appealing and a lot more friendly in the case of something like the CIA. To make it look like it's breaking our positions in terms of the class analysis. But that is not the case. We do need these things, and they are useful to us. And giving that power up would, in my opinion, be a detriment to our position as leftists. Because if you look at the oppressions that we face in society, and we look at the different hierarchical positions, especially if you want to analyze it in that regard as an anarchist on how these are different different hierarchies, and that each version represents a different hierarchy that needs to be broken down in terms of oppression. We need these tools to be able to analyze the different ways in which our society can harm people and marginalize people and oppress people. Because it's not uniform, and we need to be able to identify that particular component of it. And again, just because it's being appropriated by organizations who would seek to split people on it does not mean that it is separate from the class analysis, but is in fact a tool to allow us to identify further components of the different hierarchical oppressions that we experience and face. So I don't know if anybody has either any questions about it or inputs they'd like to add, but I'd definitely like to open the floor up to people. Giving up intersectionalism seems obtuse in its motivation. I think a lot of the people, Mifune, who have made that type of claim, that we should give it up. Jay, welcome. I'm glad you stopped by. I'm sorry you can't stay, but thank you for the well wishes, and I hope to see you next week, definitely. I think that in a lot of cases, the idea that this is not supposed to be something, like it's something that we're supposed to give up, and the breakdown of it being into a purely class reductionist standpoint, I think misses the mark, because I think we're better. We are functionally better when we're able to identify all these different forms of oppression and kind of bring them all together. M says, what's so cringe about the ad and how the idea of intersectionality is that it identifies how we're oppressed is to say one is damaged in some way. That's the thing. A lot of people think that within these conversations, that when we define oppression, that we're sitting there and saying, oh, this group is a victim. You hear that on the right a lot, right? The conservative perspective is, oh, see, you're a victim. That's what you're being identified as. Far from it. Being able to analyze and identify what our oppressions are is not a form of victimhood, but is in fact a tool that we can use to overcome our oppressions, to create a more just and equal society. And in doing so, we're able to create a better reality. Just because one is able to say, I am in some way disadvantaged from the society, doesn't make someone a victim. In fact, it empowers people. It's a tool to overcome our positions and statuses in society and create that reality. Emma says, I don't see how a leftist could give up intersectionality without giving up on racial, sexual, and gender equality altogether, and going completely into equality for all white men. I am completely with you on that, Emma, and I am absolutely glad that you brought that up, because the reality of that is that when you break everything apart from the intersectional experience and you try to create a universal experience of class analysis without those components that often identify parts of the class analysis that we would miss otherwise, you end up prioritizing the perspectives of the majority. Anytime you create a universal understanding, you end up prioritizing those in power. You create a situation where there's a lack of nuance, a lack of being able to identify the different ways we experience the world. You create a singular narrative. And I'll be real with you, the difference between a right-wing perspective and a left-wing perspective that is purely class analysis is not as much as I would like to admit. There's a similarity in their perspective. There's an ability to ignore the plight of certain groups of people who are marginalized and who are oppressed in our societies, at the cost of a class unification in popularism. We end up recreating a lot of the same structures and narratives. And if you look at the voices that get privileged and prioritized in that kind of narrative where it's purely class analysis, it is typically the people who are at the top of our current society who benefit the most. Let me just catch up with chat. We need to be scientific in our analysis. We often class reductionism just romanticizes the working class as it shares some mystical consciousness. Here's what I'll also say, Mifune. There is a narrative that a lot of people like to put out there that the working class, especially in history, is a very white analysis of a working class, where you get this idea of white union workers who all went out and fought for the unions over the past 100 or so years. But in reality, if you really analyze it in an intersectional way, you come to realize that the labor force is a intersectional experience. You often have a lot of people of color within that labor force. In fact, for a good deal of American history, people of color have been the bulk of the labor force. One of the issues within second wave feminism was that it didn't include the experience that a lot of women of color in particular, and this is why you see a movement into the idea of womanism, and third wave feminism bringing and calling this out. This idea that you have women of color working outside the home way earlier than white women were complaining about not being able to do so and desiring autonomy from it. Women of color were not only in the workplace, they were often doing the domestic work for white women in their own homes. And so that experience was largely ignored due to a lack of intersectionality. And it's those voices and experiences that can be identified much more easily in that narrative. And I've also heard some people make the argument that within this experience and narrative of intersectionality, that it is an identification of groups like how men or white people experience the damage of that cause. But that's not the case. That is an important aspect of analysis, but I don't think that explicitly ties to the idea of intersectionalism. It's been a misrepresentation that I have heard, so I kind of wanted to just clarify that in case anybody had heard that narrative. The fact that we're able to identify the ways in which men, for example, are affected by patriarchy, or the ways that white people are affected by the concept of whiteness, and the way that that's reinforced by the oppressor group onto the next generation. That's not what we're talking about in terms of intersectionality. Intersectional understandings would be about defining the ways in which oppressed groups experience things. And so it kind of misses the mark a little bit if you put that there, though that is an important aspect of the analysis to help us understand how these things are perpetuated and grow over time. I hope that made sense. Merchants is going to grab food. Enjoy. Let me catch up with chat. King Cyrus says, look at what Kyle Kulinski said about how working class Americans don't care about pronouns. Quite the contrary, right? First of all, I think we all should be caring about pronouns, whether we're cis or trans, whether we're, no matter what our experience is, pronouns matter, and how we identify ourselves in this world matters. And rather than identifying that as exclusively a trans issue, I think that's something that we should be talking about as just an issue in general. Like, to be able to normalize the idea of saying our pronouns is something that will benefit us all. But secondly, I need to point out that trans people are a huge part of that working class. So to say that working class Americans do not care about pronouns is to miss the point and the mark entirely. The number of trans people who are part of that workforce, in fact, I'd argue that most trans people are, generally speaking, going to be in the lower economic branches of our society just based on the way statistics work, right? Even if we ignore the oppression, even if we ignore the fact that they're probably likely to be paid less, that they're likely to not be able to get access to jobs as often, even if we ignore the fact that some people are able to pass and present in certain ways that will give them certain advantages, if we just examine that one component, they are more likely to be part of the lower economic sectors of our society, and to be part of the working class. You care about that. You care about your own experience. And that's the thing that frustrates me. To say that the working class doesn't care about race, to say the working class doesn't care about pronouns, to say that the working class doesn't care about gender issues, is to ignore the fact that a large part of women, a large part of people, the populations of people of color, and a large part of the trans community are working class and do care about and value these things. And only by looking at this intersectional experience of class with these other aspects do we get to see that come to its full force. It allows us to break that narrative that the working class is made up of white, cis, straight men. Because it isn't. That is not the working class. And it's very easy for someone like Kyle Kulinski to come out and say that. Especially given his experience and narrative. And again, this is not me trying to call out a single person or to say this person is bad, but I think that his take in this particular regard is not only problematic, but potentially harmful to certain groups and peoples that are outside of his range and experience. It likely is very much ignorance, and it's something that I wish that would be addressed and talked about more, because a lot of these terms can get muddled, with time, especially with the right putting out narratives and counter narratives to our positions, as well as bringing about these ideas that shift our perspective on the left. And if we allow the voices of the oppressed groups to be stepped upon or pushed aside in our spaces, this is what tends to manifest. And, I don't think he particularly has malice, but I think it makes people amenable to certain conservative perspectives and ideas that really are a detriment to our movement. It allows someone like Kyle Kulinski in this case, and I'm just, again, using him as an example, because, again, I'm not interested in the individuals, but the trends that they represent. People in that similar mindset that have this type of perspective are more likely to see someone like Tucker Carlson even as a potential ally, even if he himself does not. The idea that you could be amenable to this populist idea, this right-wing rhetoric of how the working class is this unified thing and that they're upset and that they're feeling this invalidation, you can very easily start to see this almost red-brown type alliance form, which is not where I think we need to be or want to be if we're to create a better world and reality. And again, like I said, you can point out, no, we really don't need to bring him up, King Cyrus, but that's another great example. Jimmy Dore is another great example of that. And I'm going to leave it at that, because that's a whole other can of worms that I am not prepared to open right now for my own emotional well-being and health. Wow, that ship looks good. I'm sorry, I just got so distracted by that. That's intense. Mifune says, but Tara, don't you know that the white cis men are mystical embodiment of the working class. Oh yeah, absolutely. Emma says, seems familiar. A lot of Labour Party right-wingers are talking about dropping identity issues and focusing on traditional working class. I wonder who they mean by that. Well, we know who they mean by that, right? And so here's another thing I'd want to point out in reference to that type of idea. If the CIA uses the idea of wokeness and uses intersectionality as a tool, and people start to associate the idea that the CIA is in some way intersectional, then essentially it gives the idea that it's not revolutionary. And so it serves another purpose that might be a little more sinister if we really break it down. The idea that by creating the narrative that you are in some way, shape, or form, connected to intersectional thought, that you are not revolutionary. And that is a terrifying concept. And don't think the CIA is not aware that putting out this ad is creating that type of narrative. They have people who are very skilled at trying to create counter narratives. They've been doing it for 100 years. They are very adept at creating those counter narratives to influence the way the world works. And that's how they create coups and split movements. And so this liberal understanding of intersectionality is also lacking because I want to point this out as well. I've spent a lot of time focusing on the intersectional components of things like race and gender and all these other components, right? And ableism, and if I missed any specific forms of oppression, it's not because I'm trying to exclude it, but to sit here and list them all every single time is an exhaustive exercise. So I am trying to include as many of those ideas as possible, even if I missed one or two. But the thing is, the liberal understanding of intersectionality misses a key component. It misses the class analysis. It misses the idea that capitalism is the thing that is the driving force behind a lot of the other oppressions. Because that's part of the intersectional understanding. You have class intersecting with all these other different ideas. And so the liberal part is the flip side of class reductionism, right? To be class reductionist is to say, I see the class analysis without the fully functional form of racial oppression, of gender oppression, of all these other things. But to be in that liberal intersectional understanding is to identify race and gender and all these things and to just say, if we work within capitalism, we can create a new capitalism that is inclusive and deals with all these new issues. We can deal with the gender pay gap. We can deal with the racial oppression, but we don't have to fix capitalism. That's fine. So it's this counter to class reductionism. But it's only by unifying both understandings that we truly create a leftist understanding of all of the hierarchies of oppression. Because to leave one of those circles out of the Venn diagram is to ignore a key component of reality. And to point that out, I would like to point out a very, very specific example of that particular analysis in let's take Caitlyn Jenner, for example. Caitlyn Jenner does not experience the same level of class oppression that most trans people experience. Therefore, her experience is going to be vastly different. And in a liberal society, in a liberal understanding of intersectionalism, there is no functional difference between Caitlyn Jenner and your average trans person who is experiencing, their daily life trying to work 40 hours or 20 to 40 hours a week to survive, if not 60 and 80 hours a week. There's no functional difference. Their repressions are identical. But if you add that class analysis back in and you bring it back into a leftist understanding, you start to understand why she's able to position herself as a Republican why she is able to position herself into that fascist understanding, and how it is that her financial position enables her to do so. And this is why the intersectional component is important. Furthermore, if you look at it as a pure class analysis and you reduce everything down to class, what you end up getting is a version of things where if you have, say, a wealthy black man in this country, or just in any sort of experience, you'd say, for example, well, he's wealthy, so he does not experience anything different from any other wealthy white person. It's very easy under class reductionist understanding to come to that conclusion. Well, all wealthy people experience the world exactly the same. But we know that's not the case. We know for a fact that oftentimes what can happen is even if you are a wealthy black man in this country, you may still be pulled over by the cops or questioned by the cops outside of your own home simply for your skin color. So to ignore that reality is in itself a form of missing the mark of that experience. So that is why intersectionality is so important between class and all of the other oppressions. Because only by analyzing all of that together can we come to the reality that even though a black man might be wealthy, he still experiences a form of oppression in terms of blackness. And it's why we can talk about the concept of white privilege and how in that one aspect, a poor white person has a privilege over a poor black person. A wealthy black person. But in terms of class analysis, this black man, this hypothetical person that we're talking about, is experiencing a class privilege over that white poor man. So it is by that intersectional understanding and by merging all of these different forms of oppression that we're able to come to this thing. And a lot of right-wingers will break this down as oppression Olympics. No, far from it. It's an analyzation of all the things that we experience, of the nuances and ways that we can identify our positions. And a lot of these ideas also get muddled and complicated, and part of the reason that critical race theory in particular is an important component in academic circles for understanding these different forms of oppression is that the way race in particular manifests is a very weird concept. First of all, the idea in the US of creating a concept of, and it's not just in the US, right? But I'm familiar with the US, and so I feel more comfortable speaking on that experience. Blackness and whiteness are identified as two different components. But how do you identify Asian peoples into that mix? How do you identify people from the Indian subcontinent into that mix as part of that Asian understanding? How do you functionally put people with different skin tones and different representation? How do you put people of mixed or multiracial people into those categories? And so that's another layer of everything. You know, you have ideas like passing privilege, even within groups of people who have lighter skin color and darker skin colors, where they're able to have a sort of color privilege, which goes back and has historic roots, especially in Latin America, where, you know, lighter skinned people were prioritized and privileged over darker skinned people. And so these complexities of our society start to unravel as we break this down. Colorism, exactly, Cray. And so we start to analyze these different relationships that we see. And the point isn't to necessarily break everything down to these individual components and to say, well, if you don't accept this, you're sexist and you're racist, like a lot of conservatives like to do. Nor is it a desire to trap people, but it's an idea to try to understand all of our lived experiences and put words to things that we've experienced in our daily lives. And that's why it's an important understanding. And it gives us tools to analyze our realities. That's the main point of it all. And to break it down and to say, well, all you're trying to do is make it a trap to say, you know, I'm worried about being called racist, I'm worried about being called sexist, is to turn this narrative and literally make it about you as the oppressor class. It's not about the oppressor class, and quite the contrary. The last thing that we're trying to do in these narratives is to express, oh, well, everybody's, you're a racist and you're a sexist. Rather, it is to identify a different lived experience from the standard narrative of that universal white, cis, straight man who's able-bodied and otherwise existing in comfort. To remark and say this particular aspect of the world is not what everybody experiences. That is quite different. It is egotistical on their part because they're making an experience and conversation that isn't about them. But what does that say about that conservative understanding? That they don't even want to share the stage because it is so important for them and it hinges all of their belief on this universal understanding. That to come out with a perspective different from theirs is literally an attack on their worldview, is an attack on their perspectives, and breaks their entire narrative. They need to create an idea that we are all, in some ways, experiencing some universal American, for example, ideology or perspective. That we can all call to the same history of, the founding fathers and the mythos of American exceptionalism, while ignoring the fact that that doesn't apply to indigenous communities that were displaced by that exact narrative. That doesn't adhere to the idea of darker-skinned people who were literally enslaved during that time. It doesn't adhere to the perspective of women who were not there to write the founding documents because they were left out of the conversation, with the exception of Abigail Adams, who spoke through her husband's voice. You have a lot of these positions where America, for example, its ideals and what it's supposed to represent are not represented. And so we have to confront that history and confront that narrative and confront that story, that the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence, that wrote the Constitution, were people who were not committed to the ideas that they wrote down on paper. That they didn't represent the entirety of humanity. And quite the contrary, many of them were only able to do it because of their class privilege, because of their racial privilege, and the fact that, Tom Jefferson, for example, if we're to break that analysis down, he was someone who could get away from his plantation because he had people there to run it. He had his economy taken care of for him so that he was benefited to go out and do the things that he did. Off the back of black people who he enslaved, off the back of his wife and the women in his life who ran the plantation while he was out going to Pennsylvania and writing these documents, off of the backs of every single poor person or servant or indentured servant that he employed or otherwise took care of his needs. That's ignored. And that's important analysis. And to erase that history is a problem. Because whose history are we talking about? Whose history are we talking about? I want to be a part of it. I don't need to be like the most important aspect of history, far from it. I just like to be recognized in terms of seeing myself in the history. But where do I see myself in the history? Let me catch up with chat because I kind of ranted a little bit there, but I think it was a good rant. Latin America had colorism enforced through La Casta during the Hispanic period. Oh, absolutely, Mifune. I mean, that stuff's still enforced now in much more subtle ways. Welcome, friendo. I am glad that you all enjoyed my rant. Yeah, a lot of the colorism is still a huge factor in Latin America. I mean, a big part of the Cuban populations that we see in the US and why they didn't like Castro and why they were upset with a lot of the things that happened. And I'm not fully defending all of that, but just as part of the analysis, is it was a lot of white plantation owners who got very upset that the people who were they were still enslaving in some regard were able to find liberation. We can argue about whether or not the methodology was effective, but a lot of the people who fled, most of the people I'd say who fled Cuba at that time, were the lighter skinned peoples. Those who would be identified as white in Latin America. And I think that's something that often gets lost in the category of Latino in the United States, because if you're light skinned or you're black, you're still identified under that same label. And it's a complicated history because, yes, you do come from a certain cultural understanding, which is kind of uniform there, but also not, because the history of oppression and class that is tied together with race in Latin America is often something that is very complicated to discuss, especially as it moves into the United States, and how that's dealt with in terms of speaking Spanish, in terms of that connection to a language and culture that has formed out of that complex fabric that was weaved through the slavery of that occurred in Latin America, through the importation of African Americans or African, I guess, African populations into the Americas would be a more accurate way to say that, mixed with indigenous populations, and mix that with the white imperialists who came into these lands and stole the land from indigenous populations. And you have that mixing of three different identities that come together. And the history of this identifies this reality because you had so many different phrases, so many different terminologies that were developed. If you were a quarter indigenous and a quarter black and half white, you had an entire name for yourself. Like, what? Like, this is something that when we identify it has a rich history in the fact that the oppressor classes have identified these terms and created them for us. The fact that we're able to give some sort of analysis to all of this and to talk about it is important, because that's the other thing to keep in mind with intersectionality. We're not inventing this. This existed. We're putting words to things that have already existed that were created. Men created patriarchy. White people developed whiteness. This is not something that CRT or feminists, feminist theories created. It's an identification process. It is putting language to things that already exist and were created through the society. Just like it is not poor people through their class consciousness that developed capitalism, but rather it is the capitalists who developed a system of oppression, and it is only through class consciousness and the development of understanding through class consciousness that we will rise above it. Also, I was going to catch up with chat, so let me do that, actually, instead of going on another thing. It's an attack on them, and it deconstructs their idea of the grand narrative, and that they have the United States. Again, it's a mythical understanding of the US that is not the reality. Absolutely. French Revolution is considered the most revolutionary revolution because of the ideas presented in it compared to the American Revolution. And I will counter that by talking about Haiti. The Haitian Revolution, which took its roots. You want to talk about whether or not the American Revolution was truly about revolution and the ideals that it kept up? Haiti is the exact example, because you see how France and the United States respond to Haiti. There was more fear from the southern plantation owners about the Haitian Revolution than there was support for Haiti. The US, if it was really interested in the formation of a republic and the formation of ideas that represented some sort of unified force of republics against monarchies in the world, they would have embraced Haiti. but they were more worried about their position of losing their class position and the idea that black people in the United States could wake up and rebel. And if they agreed to deal with Haiti as equals, it would have been an affront to their white supremacist understandings of the world. That's the key marker. When you look at the intersection between the American Revolution and the French Revolution, Haiti falls right in the middle of that. And the fact that Haiti had to pay reparations back to France for daring to rebel is ridiculous and absurd when you look at that history. Me. Why can't more people understand this? It's so frustrating. I'd argue it's probably willful ignorance, merchants. Duke, I hope you take care. Latin America still has more work to do to repair the fault lines that La Casta cleaved into the social fabric of the region. Absolutely true, Mifune. And if you look at a lot of the coups that the United States has done through the CIA into Latin America, a lot of times they will utilize that same La Casta and will utilize those racial lines as a tool. The question of history ties into Emma's point about tradition in power, who don't want to face themselves. They also are scared that others will do to them what they have done to others. Oh, and that's an absolutely great point. This idea and this analysis that power and how we express power is done in such a way as to reclaim equality appears to the oppressor class as a form of oppression. If you are told your entire existence that the world is just, that everything is good and even and across the board, and is universal, and somebody comes up to you and says, actually, you have a form of advantage over me, that to them sounds like a power grab that is attempting to push them into an oppressed status and to make them below you. And so any attempt at equality is going to be seen and represented by the oppressor classes as something in which they experience a form of losing their power and to become oppressed. That is part of the problem that we deal with in these analyses. It's a willful ignorance that gets created. Because to identify and see the oppression is to acknowledge that you've had an advantage and to acknowledge the flaw in your own worldview, and it feels like a loss. It is a loss of something that isn't tangible. Oppressor classes love to make use of the "you're oppressing yourself" narrative. Oh, absolutely. And it's a narrative like, oh, you're oppressing yourself. If only you just picked yourself up from your bootstraps. I wish more people who were in the class reductionist camp would see that those two arguments are identical. You as a person of color are oppressing, if from the conservative perspective, right? You as a person of color are oppressing yourself. All you need to do is pick yourself up from your bootstraps. Poor white person. How are those two not identical? They're the exact same narrative. And it's used as a tool to put us in the position where we're not working hard enough. We're not doing enough. We're not taking care of ourselves. But in reality, we're identifying the experience. And that's important and that's revolutionary. Because by being able to listen to other people within our movements, to be able to listen to other people's experiences, to go into dialogue with the people around us, is a revolutionary process. By necessity. it gets really annoying, and you end up with folks who pedal it up by going full Staxel. Yep. That is exactly what ends up happening every single time. I need to... Serana traveled a lot to get here. Yeah, could she have seen something? Do you suppose you could take her this note? You always seem to know where everything is. You've always been a good friend. I don't believe I did, Mifune. I'm sorry if I did. If I missed anything. If I've missed any of your comments, you know, I've been trying to keep up with chat while also talking through this whole process, so by all means just send another message and just say it again. If I missed your thing, it was not a purposeful ignoring of your ideas, because I enjoy having this conversation with everybody. It's just sometimes scrolling through the chat and trying to like keep up with my own thought process while trying to play the game. Sometimes that all can be a little bit difficult. Most of the early exiles from Cuba during that period were wealthy folks who saw themselves as whiter than the general population regardless of their actual heritages. Absolutely true. Where is Saron? Stasserism is where the Nazis basically attempted getting socialists on their side, along with the Social Democrats. Absolutely true. That's a very, very distinct way of putting it. A request for Serana. Serana understands. Serana never saw anyone matching that description in her travels, but Serana does know a way. It's how she ended up finding her way here in search of her father. Serana can scry. All that's needed is some kind of catalyst. Come back anytime. Okay, let me bring this back to Ria. Is that a note from Serana? She says she needs a catalyst to do some kind of ritual. I hope it's not a dark ritual. That sounds a bit scary. But if you trust her, I will too. I need some time to figure out what to be used as a catalyst. Could you make me an incense lure? Okay. How do I make an incense lure? An acorn, lumber, a rhinoceros beetle. Hey, base cat. They're all having a little pool party by the lake over here. It's so cute. I think I can get back to working on the ship a little bit more. I am actually loving that wing right now. Otto von Stasser, I think, was the founder of the ideology within the Nazi Party. He was considered the moderate wing of the Nazi Party. I'm just gonna be real. The phrase moderate wing of the Nazi Party is not something that, you know, rationally makes sense in my head. But I also know what you're saying. He wanted to keep socialism there along with the fascism. Well, the thing is, in a lot of ways, and I am a firm believer of this, fascism essentially, right? The moderate wing of the fascist party. The thing about fascism is it is quite comfortable using the rhetoric of socialism, but socialism only for certain groups. Fascism has no issue, none, with creating a socialism of a certain, ethnic group. And it relies on a lot of populist ideas that surround themselves with this rhetoric of people feeling alienated from their realities, right? But the response of a fascist in all of that is going to be the reason you do not have, you being a, say, white men, white cis men, the reason you do not have is because blah, blah, blah group. And by scapegoating that group, as opposed to the class analysis, right? Instead of saying it's the capitalists, if you say something like it's this particular group that's doing this to you, you have essentially scapegoated another group. You get to maintain the power structure. You maintain that issue while speaking the language of socialism. That's why the Nazis were so effective in certain ways of what they did, because they were able to pinpoint and say it is these quote-unquote degenerate groups of society. That's why you do not have. And if we get rid of these groups, everything will be better. We will be able to have effectively a socialism of our class. And that's the rhetoric they use. But behind the scenes, they'll say things like, well, capitalism's a problem, not because capitalism alienates people, but capitalism actually makes people too free, because it allows the group that we don't like to participate in it. And so it's this dual understanding of fascism, where it sells and, buys and sells in the rhetoric of socialism. But behind closed doors, with their own analyses, because of the group that they're trying to scapegoat, they will specifically target that group and will know full well that the issue with capitalism actually is that it empowers that group to have any sort of say in their own autonomy, even in a remote aspect. Capitalism is effectively too free for them. Liberal democracy is too free for them. And that's how it manifests itself in splitting off on that very right understanding and branch. That's where that nationalistic component comes from. Many of the wealthy elites in Latin America have intersecting interests with colonizer corporations in the United States and choose to identify more with Western culture than Latin America's heritage. True, Mifune, I'm really glad you pointed that out. Mussolini was a disaffected socialist. Exactly, and that's how we can see that shift into some sort of national identity rather than a perspective of that it's difficult to... Fascism in many ways is an idiosyncratic ideology, has many people think. Even Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan and the idea of the sovereign is considered the first authoritarian doctrine. It's difficult to pinpoint where the ideology has a starting point. Funny enough, Hobbes's Leviathan was actually a stab at the monarchy. It's a weird understanding. But what Hobbes was doing was actually establishing the roots of the early understanding of the Republic, which is kind of fascinating because Hobbes identifies the monarch not as divinely inspired from God, but as having a social contract between the people and the monarch. And if there's a contract, that means it can be broken. So there's a weird analysis there where Hobbes actually ends up creating the foundational understanding for how you can break the contract with the monarch and establishes a tradition that begins the destruction of the monarchy in Europe. It's something subtle that is missed by a lot of people. And it was probably him trying to write these very radical perspectives without being able to do so. But it is the early tradition of where we start to see a shift from the feudal authoritarianism into the oligarchical understanding of what would be considered modern liberal republican society. Titling a book The Leviathan about the monarchy doesn't frame monarchy in a positive light considering the mythological context of the monarchy. That's also true, Cray, and that's a good point. The idea was not that the monarch was the Leviathan itself, but rather it was the nation state, the formulation of the people and the monarch as a combined force in that contract that formulated the Leviathan. Now, Hobbes had all sorts of issues that, within his framing and writing, that we cannot ignore, and we should not ignore, in the fact that he basically identified, what's the word I'm trying to say? He basically identified the perspective of the monarch as the head of the Leviathan in a necessary social contract that people needed to take because of the concept of basically original sin. And the argument basically is that people are brutish and that nature is brutish, and we come together to subvert that understanding of ourselves. In a lot of ways, anarchy is the exact opposite of the Hobbesian perspective, and identifies human nature by necessity, not as one that is brutish and problematic, but rather as one that enables us to see the good in people. It's actually fascinating to see a Hobbesian analysis done by anarchists. And a lot of early anarchists kind of have that written into their language. I've actually noticed that Malatesta actually has a little bit of a Hobbesian analysis within his writings. Which is something useful to look at. I can see the commonality of Hobbes' work there. Okay. Though some argue fascism has its root with the line, strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. That is another good point to mark the beginnings of fascism. Early fascist thinkers, too, were unsurprisingly reactionary monarchists. True. I mean, a dictatorship is effectively, an authoritarian dictatorship is effectively a monarchy with no position of divine rule, per se, and without the tradition. But all of the cult of personality. So I definitely see how we can draw that connection. Benjamin Tucker thought that Hobbes' account of human nature was correct, but that made it foolish to think that the power of the state could be concentrated to any trusting hand. That's another interpretation that I've seen that is true. That if human nature is this brutish Hobbesian idea, that how can we trust somebody to rule over us? And I guess I should also make that distinction. The idea that we have to have a more positive understanding of human nature, I think, is much more akin to a communal understanding of anarchy. I'm actually not fully familiar with how Tucker would analyze like an individualist versus a communal understanding of anarchism. I'm not familiar enough with the writings. Maybe you could actually fill me in there. But I definitely think in a communal understanding that it helps, at the very least, in terms of philosophical ideas, to be able to identify some sort of positive aspect of human nature, that we can come together and do that, even if it's not innate, even if it's like a tabula rasa kind of thing. And is that what I meant to say? Sorry, I blanked for a second. Tabula rasa. Yeah, okay. That is exactly what I meant. Hobbes is, in my view, incorrect because he, in my opinion, didn't seem to understand native societies and how they lived. A lot of Europeans assume that's how indigenous people lived. True. But it's also a direct contradiction with the whole narrative that a lot of Europeans had of the noble savage, which is honestly makes me feel sick even saying out of my mouth, but unfortunately that's the reality we live in, where that was not only a understanding of Europe in the 17th and 16th century, but it's an idea that carries into a lot of people's perspective to this day in a very disturbing way. I blanked with tabula rasa, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I was saying the right phrase. Because my brain started translating that in all sorts of different ways. Yeah, I definitely should. There's actually a great video that was produced by Twin Rabbit that talks a lot about how a lot of modern leftist understandings is actually probably born from a misinterpretation of indigenous practices. And like not just a misinterpretation, actually that's a very it's blanketed just an appropriation of Native American understandings. Very, very good video. Very much worth watching. Westerns in the feudal era believed government was class hierarchies were part of a natural order created by the Christian God. Hobbes said no governments are man-made. Yeah, that's a good point, Mifune. That's what I was trying to get at. We got barbecue from a misunderstanding of Taino practices. True. You're not salty? But is the... Terrible joke. I was about to ask if the barbecue was salty. Barbacoa tiene sal. True. Salty barbecue sounds so good. Now you're all making me hungry. Tucker was an individualist or anarchist who thought civil society should be based on overt contracts between sovereigns. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I do not tend to personally agree with a lot of individualist anarchist perspectives, if that wasn't very clear. I tend to very much be more of a communal understanding and belief system. Not gonna lie, I'm loving the detail that Tara's adding to the wings. Oh. I'm glad it's coming out this, like, detailed. Like, I'm loving this layered effect. Says, I forgot to mention that I'm still around. I just finally got some energy to craft a bit. Y'all motivate me. I'm glad you're finding motivation with the stream, Em. I hope your crafting goes extremely well. Also, you're going for realistic wing proportions. I don't know. I was debating on that, honestly. Like, how much further should I draw these wings out? Because I love the fact that it has that feathered look and that the gray under it ends up bringing out that, like, feathered effect. I mean, it already looks like a massive wingspan, right? I also think, if I'm gonna be real, because of the tower being here, part of me is, like, tempted to have the other wing facing downward. But I don't even know how to make that look okay. Also, what is that? Oh, neat. How much further do you all think I should... I was thinking of having the wing folded on the other side because of the tower. Yeah. Like, have it folded down so that it looks like it's docked here, but have the other wing fully extended so that I don't have to create the symmetry. Because there's no way I'm matching this symmetrically. That's just not happening. Also, I feel like I should add... this in here. To make that just a little bit more realistic. Oh, actually, I don't think I can. There. What I can do, however, is put it here. There we go. Birds stretch like that, one wing at a time. But I think one pointing downward. Is that what we're talking about? Something like that, yeah. Merchants, I'm making some tie-on pockets because I love pockets, and also I'm working on a thimble. That's awesome. I'm sewing a leather thimble, but I had to make the holes before I can sew the pieces together. That is so amazing, Em, that you can do that. Bad faith Wokus. Terra is culturally appropriating the flying ship technology from the Koopa Kingdom. That's funny. That's too accurate of how conservatives would half joke. That's true. I am absolutely loving this. How much further should this go out? For real? Because I could extend that for a while, honestly. Do you think it needs to taper to a point? That's what I was also thinking about. Like, how would I taper that to a point? And how far would I go before doing that? The Koopas are upset. Yeah. Well, Mifune, I hope you enjoy whatever you're doing to celebrate Mother's Day for whomever you're celebrating Mother's Day with. I gotta listen and elevate the Koopa voices that I'm also speaking of. True. Sounds good, Mifune. Maybe I'll start tapering that off because I kind of like this right here being like the full point of the wingspan, if that makes any sense, because that's like the largest part going up and down. So we could start tapering slightly here and start to try to bring it up to the point of the wingspan. Honestly, if we get this one wing done today, that would be an accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. That and this amazing conversation we're all having about intersectionality. And how it's developed into a conversation about Hobbes and everything else. Y'all are the best. I just need to say that. Oh, this community's fantastic. Have a great night, Emma. Thank you for coming out as well. my general way of phrasing intersectionality in a non-jargony way has always been says Cray. Each individual person has identities that relate to multiple groups. I mean, that's a great way of simply saying it, honestly. To put it in a distinct way, each of those groups has their unique problems. And in each person, the problems of the groups to which people belong intersect and create a unique experience that a person has to navigate. I feel like that's a great way to explain it to someone who has never had an experience talking about or dealing with these concepts. Like, it's a great starter framework for expressing a lot of these ideas. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're gonna get to finish this wing today, which makes me very happy. Okay. Nice. This is looking so good. You know, after that intense conversation, I kind of love that even though I've just been silent and for the most part building this wing, that it's just been like this chill, relaxing thing with the music to kind of draw us past that point and taper down off the conversation. I very much have enjoyed that. This Staxel music is just so relaxing, honestly. Now I just want to add some random bumps in the road, as it were, so it's not so smooth, but how's that look? We've got a wing. It's a little too uniform at the moment, but other than that, I think it looks amazing. Like, I want to add some ups and downs to the wings to make it look like I think the back looks amazing. Like I said, I just want to throw some like little grooves up and down to make it less like flat, because this flatness kind of doesn't work for me. Because it would never be as flat as that is. But other than that, I am very happy with this. Yeah, that's looking a little bit more realistic. Let's add one in the bottom, say right here. Let's add another up here. Let's add another one. I want to add it at the same spot, so move it one over. detail this out. Let's throw another right there. And let's put one right here. I think that's good. I need to fill these in. What do we think? Is that good? Right here needs that. Kind of want to add that right there just to give it a little more detail. Move there. What do you all think? Is that good? I think that's good. I want to see how that looks. You know what I might do? I don't know. Depending on what you all think. I'm tempted to like taper these off a little bit at the top so they look less like piano keys from the top, but I don't know, I kind of like it as it is. No, I think I'm gonna leave that. For a wing ship, it's kind of fire. Yeah, I'm loving this. Just taking a look at it from different angles. That's an awesome angle, honestly. Okay, honestly, I think that might be the thumbnail for next week. I love the detail on that. So let's see, today we made the ram for the ship so that, you know, we're able to have the ability to ram a rival ship to base cat. We finished this wing. We got a quest from Rhea and from upping her friendship. We talked a good deal about intersectionality, which was a lovely conversation to have. I think we accomplished a lot. We didn't quite get to the furnishing of the ship like I intended, but honestly, I cannot complain. This ship has been a work in progress for several weeks now. And it's just been an absolute joy to make this with you all watching and having these great conversations. You know, when we really boil it down, and we started with this as our model, the fact that it's turned into what it's turned into is just something so fantastic. Like, this was the starting point. This is what I was hoping to copy. And it's just kind of turned into having a life of its own. Yeah, same, like, wow. I'm not over this wing. I kinda am tempted to go in at some point to all of the streams, like download all the streams, and just kinda show off the progression of the ship in like a fast edit, and just upload that as a video. Like, even if it's just what it looked like at the beginning and end of every stream. And how it's progressed, because this has just changed so much. And I'm really glad you all enjoy this, because I have had such a good time. Like, we built this whole tower. We built the ship up. We built a lot of stuff in this game. Yeah, I'm wrapping up the stream now, I think. I hope you enjoy your meal, merchants. So, for anybody who's new or who's coming out for the first time, please consider liking this stream. Give it a good thumbs up. Subscribe for more videos. I'm hoping to be a little bit more consistent with the videos in the near future. Consider clicking the bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter, and you can join my Discord in the description down below as well. Honestly, the Discord has become such a lovely community, and there's so much going on. We have a book club, we watch stuff together, and there's just a good experience and good vibes with a community that's loving and supporting. And it's been such a I don't even know the word, such a positive experience, I guess. You're gonna give it a bad thumbs up? Okay, that's fine, Gray. The Discord's been such a wonderful aspect of this community and this experience, and something that has pleasantly shocked me at how it's formed. And so you're definitely welcome to come join that and check out that experience. I also have listed in the description down below 2 different donation links. One's for a single donation and one is for Patreon. If you're in a financial place where you are okay to do so, please do consider giving me a donation for the videos that I make and the weekly streams that I do. It's not necessary, but if you feel inclined to do so, I would very much appreciate it. That said, thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for these wonderful conversations and for taking part in it. And I hope to hear from more people with this. That said, my name is Anarchist Terra. I thank you for watching, and I look forward to streaming with you and building more of that ship next week. Have a great